welcome to episode 3 of the Footy Accumulators Betting Show with me, Will Perry, former Bayern Munich and Aston Villa striker Alan McInally, and our betting expert James Vickers. As always, Alan and James are going to go head-to-head in their nap challenge, a bet that they fancy for the week. Our match in focus is, of course, the beauty between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund, or Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich, I should say, on Tuesday, which could, of course, have a huge impact on the Bundesliga title. And we're hopefully going to be third time lucky, aren't we, with our Acca? Alan screwed it up in week 1. I hold my hands up for this one. I've let us down. I've let the team down, and everyone who copied us or followed our lead. I fancied Freiburg to beat Werder Bremen at home, having seen how bad Bremen were the week before, immediately after the restart. And they got that win, didn't they, at the Schwarzwald Stadion. So, guys, I apologise.
It's not good enough, James, is it?
No, that's the one team that cost me my Acca this weekend, so solely on Will.
I know, to make you feel that little bit better, Will, I unfortunately went along with you, and that killed my Acca as well. So it's a double, it's a triple, it's like a quadruple dunt. But we're going to get it right for Tuesday, Wednesday, hopefully.
We are. I tried to chase my tail on the Sunday as well with some Bundesliga's 5 results, and that all went wrong as well. So, just to remind everyone what we did last week, we went Hertha Berlin, Dortmund and Bayern with a -1 handicap that was boosted to 16-1 from 11-1 with Paddy Power. They all got the job done, and Christian Strike's boys let us down. If you're looking for additional stats and trends ahead of the Bundesliga this week, make sure you download the Footy Accumulators Betting Hub app. Give the smart Acca function a try. Remember, you've got to be 18 plus to bet, and please gamble responsibly. So here are the results from Gameweek 27 in the Bundesliga. Hertha won that Berlin derby 4-0 on Friday night. Leverkusen, Werder Bremen, Dortmund and Bayern all winners on Saturday, with Augsburg, Leipzig picking up the points on Sunday. This is what the Bundesliga table looks like. Bayern still 4 points clear of Dortmund. Leipzig and Leverkusen make up the top 4. Mönchengladbach and Wolfsburg sit in the Europa League spots. And down the other end, Paderborn and Werder Bremen remain the bottom 2, despite both not losing at the weekend. Fortuna Düsseldorf still in the relegation playoff position. Alan, what caught your eye then? Because, Dortmund and Bayern still doing the business, aren't they? Still going head-to-head in that title race. What really caught your eye this week?
Neither of those games, actually. I thought Dortmund were pretty... let's just say workmanlike. I think they've got an eye on the Bayern game, no question about that. I think they were obviously too good for. Was it Wolfsburg they beat 2-0, and Guerra was quite nice. I thought he's one of the ones I was picking to get on the goal scoring sheet. And Bayern, albeit they threw away a couple of goals from a set piece. I'm going to go to the Gladbach Leverkusen game. I thought Gladbach are one of the better teams this year defensively. I think I'm right in saying, and James will probably know this better than I, certainly one of the better defences in terms of goal difference, or rather conceding goals. Leverkusen looked absolutely fantastic. The boy Kai Havertz has just got his shooting boots on. He's going to be a superstar. I know that the boy at Dortmund, Haaland, gets a lot of credit, but this guy can do no wrong. And I will add Sven Bender in that, one of the older professionals, captain of the football team. He led by example, and I'm going to go, the best performance for me at the weekend was Leverkusen's away win at Gladbach. I thought they were excellent.
They were, weren't they, James? Absolutely brilliant. And Alan mentioned him there. We've been talking about him for the last few weeks, but Kai Havertz on the score sheet, once again, 6 goals in his last 4 games in all competitions. And people will be looking at a Kai Havertz first scorer, won't they, again this week?
Yeah, definitely. Kai Havertz, absolutely fantastic form. I touched on it last week. He's really grown into the season after what was a fantastic breakout season for him last year. Struggled a little bit in the early stages of this year, which for a young player is always difficult to replicate it on sort of a consistent basis. But since the winter break and the run to the second half of the season, absolutely fantastic. And you look at how he's sort of kick-started Leverkusen almost in these 2 games since the pause, and he's been absolutely fantastic and could be that catalyst for them getting into the Champions League places this season.
Alan, one thing I wanted to talk to you about was Schalke, because we mentioned, didn't we, sort of week 1 when we started this show, about how good a job David Wagner has done there. But in recent form, and obviously they've had this huge gap in the middle. It's been a tricky couple of weeks for them, hasn't it? Really, they've got no win in their last 11 in all competitions. The last Bundesliga victory, the 17th of January, and that was against Mönchengladbach, but thumped 3-0 at home by Augsburg on Sunday. Are their top 6 hopes slipping away?
Yeah, definitely. Again, when David Wagner took over, the form was excellent. They really were excellent at the start of the season. And I was watching the game. I watched the game on at the weekend, and I thought, they ain't scoring. They ain't looking like scoring. And the American lad in the middle of the park, remind me of his name, James, I've just forgotten it, Weston McKennie. I think his name is. I thought every time I've seen him, he's kept the ball nice. He's looked neat and tidy. But I'm thinking, you've got to put the ball forward. And they didn't do that. It's all right having possession 60 yards from goal. But eventually something's got to happen. And I thought they were pretty devoid. And although there was a couple of flashes of David Wagner on the side with a hat on, he was pretty motionless and pretty, I don't know, he just looked pretty perplexed to me, as though whatever he'd said to them, it certainly wasn't working. And they look as if they're a team in the wrong direction at the moment. You certainly couldn't be betting Schalke with any confidence at the moment. And to be absolutely honest with you, I thought Augsburg probably not only deserved to win 3-0, but could have won by more.
And James, we've got to touch, haven't we, on Leipzig, 5-0 winners on Sunday over Mainz, and still in the picture, aren't they? 54 points, 57 Dortmund, 61 Bayern Munich. Yeah,
definitely. I think key result, ideal result for them in the Klassiker coming up this week will be both Bayern and Dortmund dropping points, and they can really close that gap. Timo Werner, as you mentioned, 5-0, grabbing a hat-trick, excellent. We speak of Kai Havertz and Erling Haaland, and Werner sometimes gets left at that conversation, but he's another fantastic young player, really coming into his own in the Bundesliga. He's really carried that Leipzig forward line single-handedly at times. The likes of Sabitzer and Yusuf Poulsen as well, quite rightly, make the headlines, but Werner, for where he can play across that front line, he can play right, he can play left, can play down the middle with his explosive pace, and what a player he is. And I think he's been linked with Liverpool again this week, and I think most clubs in the world would be looking at signing him just with how good he is and how much he's adapted his game since coming in from Stuttgart.
James, have you been playing them in a wider area rather than when he mixes things up a little bit? And when he plays in the wide area, he's always got an assist, always gets an assist, a little bit like Sancho. And then they play him up top, he can't stop scoring. I mean, you can play him anywhere you want. And I can understand why Klopp's really interested in taking him back to Liverpool, rather.
Do you see him as an easy fix? Sorry, James, I was saying, both guys, do we see him as an easy fix in the Premier League? Because he's been linked over the last, 4 or 5 years with big Premier League teams.
Definitely. Yeah, he, for the pace that he has, he's quite a strong player as well. So I think he'd suit the English game perfectly. Players like that, sort of quick, getting behind kind of players, don't often have that sort of physicality in their game as well, but he's not afraid to put himself about, get up for headers. He's not afraid to get tackled and make a tackle as well. So I think he is, if you could build a player to be suited to the English Premier League, you look no further than Timo Werner. And for what he'd offer specifically to Liverpool, as Alan mentioned, he can play anywhere across that forward line, how Jurgen Klopp likes it. He can play right, he can play left, and I think he'd really complement that attacking trio that Liverpool have at the moment, if he was to go there, of course.
I think Liverpool on the left-hand side, I'm saying predominantly left-hand side, he's played there a couple of times. I think he's looking for someone else to help Manny down the left-hand side, because there's a lot of pressure on the Liverpool front three. And I think if they can share the load, then, listen, he will be able to play in the Premier Division. Not only that, he'll score goals in the Premier Division. The boy's a player, no question about that.
Yeah. Right, let's move on, shall we, to our nap challenge, because let's give you a little score update. James leads Alan by 2-1, all square this week. James, of course, you picked Bayern Munich. I think you picked them at a -1 handicap, 2-5. You also mentioned, we were talking about -2 handicap. That was around evens, wasn't it? But Bayern got the job done, James, 5-2 over Frankfurt.
Yeah, I was sweating a little bit when Frankfurt got it back to 3-2 with the handicap bet I'd mentioned as well. So to see Hinteregger undo that good work that he'd done in the Bayern net to put one into his own net, breathed a sigh of relief. And I can see Alan shaking his head there. So I've gone for a little bit more of a sort of a tricky one this week. He's got no excuses for next week.
No, it was a good shout, James, a really good shout. I went for Hertha, and I promise you, the game was up. Was it Friday night, wasn't it? And I was sitting with a glass of wine when what was his name? Ibisevic. No, Ibisevic, yeah. When he headed the ball in, I was like, yes. And the wine went everywhere, because I was like, yes, I can relax going into the weekend, and James will know he's under a little bit of pressure. But Hertha's result, again, 2 wins, 7 goals. So my old pal Bruno Labbadia is fine at the moment.
Yeah, that's what you went, wasn't it? Hertha Berlin to win that the Berlin derby, Alan, in the capital. Yeah. I think it was 5-4 odds we got on that one, and like you say, getting the job done 4-0. Just a shame we didn't have a crowd there, wasn't it, in the capital? Because what an atmosphere that would have been. And look, I've already mentioned my bad luck. I went to Bayern Munich -3 handicap, and there we go. And when Frankfurt made it 5-2.
Greedy.
This is what we've got to pick from this weekend, guys. Of course, Borussia Dortmund taking on Bayern Munich in the Klassiker on Tuesday, late afternoon. I think it's a 5 o'clock kickoff, that one, isn't it? Bayern Leverkusen, Wolfsburg, also on Tuesday. Eintracht Frankfurt against Freiburg. Werder Bremen taking on Borussia Mönchengladbach. Then the Wednesday, Leipzig, Hertha Berlin, Union Berlin against Mainz, Augsburg, Paderborn, Düsseldorf taking on Schalke, and Hoffenheim, Cologne. So, James, as you're still leading, what are you going first for this challenge?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I think I'm gonna go with a little bit of a sort of a 50-50 one this week. Alan obviously mentioned how well Hertha did against Union on Friday. I've actually got Leipzig to win this, and there to be over 2.5 goals in the game. I think odds of 1.82. So all right odds. I think Leipzig, with how they played against Mainz, would at the moment, in this sort of form that they're getting into, they're really sort of, they started off slowly after the winter break. Obviously, we're only 2 games in, but to put 5 past Mainz and then be going back to their home stadium as well against the Hertha team, who are good on their travels, but the Union team that they beat on Friday were quite poor. So I think Leipzig should win that game. I think there will be goals in it. Both sides know where the back of the net is. Obviously, Leipzig put 5 past Mainz today, as I mentioned, and Hertha scored 4 on Friday. So over 2.5 goals, Leipzig for me. And yeah, hopefully I can go 3 for 3 with that one.
Alan, what do you fancy?
I like that one. Can I have that one? Because James said is spot on there. They looked imperious today, Leipzig. They really did. And I wouldn't be surprised if certainly both teams to score. I quite like the over 2.5 goal. Well, I've got to stick. I mean, you know, you said to me what was the weekend's best for me, and I've got to go Leverkusen. I've got to stick with Leverkusen. They play at home to Wolfsburg. And Mr. Havertz, Bender, etc., I think will do the business. I mean, Wolfsburg did, albeit in the 91st, 92nd minute, turned over 2-1. Augsburg they beat in the first game, and then they get pretty easily, I thought, just kind of rolled over against Dortmund, and they didn't show me too much. I think Leverkusen will simply be too good, too strong. They move the ball a lot quicker than Wolfsburg, who have looked a little laborious even against a better team like Dortmund. So I'm going to go just a plain and simple Leverkusen to win, and hopefully I can stay on James's tail.
There we go. Can you level it up for next week? So yeah, Leverkusen, you could get odds of 3-4. Just looking down at a couple of charts, if Leverkusen to beat Wolfsburg at home in game week 28. Right, our match in focus. It was an absolute no-brainer, James. This one, the Klassiker. So much to look forward to. Would you say that, you know, Bayern win this, the title's done?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. If they win it, 7 points clear with 6 to play, I don't think many Dortmund fans would expect Dortmund to catch Bayern from there. I think for Dortmund, especially after the last 2 meetings against Bayern, the last 2 have both been at the Allianz, have been 4-0 and 5-0. So coming into this game off the back of 2 really heavy defeats against Bayern, 2 defeats which have really sort of derailed title charges as well. So Dortmund have everything to gain and not much to lose going into this game. And it's really, over the last few years since Jurgen Klopp left, it's really been an acid test for any Dortmund manager how well they do against Bayern Munich. They're expected to beat teams below them. The Bayern Munich game is the one that matters for a Dortmund manager and for the Dortmund fans. So everything to gain for Dortmund here. I think it will be a brilliant game. The games at Signal Iduna, for whether it's the fans or just that sort of compactness of the stadium, are a lot closer than the games at the Allianz Arena, where the Dortmund players seem to go into their shell a little bit. They went in 10 games unbeaten last season to the Allianz Arena and then got beat 4-0. So didn't really follow form. The game, though, at the Signal Iduna, Dortmund always turn up for. Whether that'll be the same without a crowd remains to be seen, but I'm pretty confident that Dortmund can at least get something off Bayern in this game.
When you look at the odds, Alan, on this one, trying to touch them, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, you look 13-5 Dortmund for the win at home, 3-1 the draw, 4-5 for Bayern Munich. James mentioned it there. You know, Bayern's form, unbeaten in their last 17 in all competitions. They've won 16 of those. The last defeat, I think, was against Mönchengladbach back in December. Home advantage, is there such a thing now?
Well, there was 5 away wins on the first day, and I think there was 5 away wins on the second day. I mean, no is the answer, basically. And it's a shame, obviously, because we would have loved it, the noise, the atmosphere, etc., etc., etc. It's just not going to be there. Bayern normally handle that kind of thing anyway, because when you get to a team like Bayern Munich, you're expected to be up against it, you're expected to win the game, and you expect a little bit of hostility against you. I had it for years, and you just get used to it. In fact, good players and top players, they kind of consume that, and it kind of focuses the mind, and that's obviously not going to be there. I think there's more pressure on Dortmund a little bit in this game for the simple reason that exactly what James said, it's against Bayern that you're going to be judged on almost, and they know that a result psychologically would be humongous, but the way Bayern are playing and scoring goals, and I suppose you could say the same about Dortmund, but I just think Bayern look a little slicker. I think they'll get more experience in not necessarily a big game. That's unfair to say that about Dortmund. I just fancy Bayern, I really do. With the likes of, Thomas Müller and obviously Lewandowski. I'll tell you what the biggest, I'm really looking forward to. If they play Pavard, Alphonso Davies, and they play Alaba and Boateng in the middle, how they manage to cope with Haaland, because he's basically their talisman. You get the ball in the box from wide areas, and I think wide areas is where it might be with Sancho, etc., bombing down the flanks, as well as Davis, Gnabry, etc., bombing down the other side. So I think if you can rule this outside area and get the ball in the box, that'll be interesting. So I'm looking forward to see how Haaland copes with top defenders in Boateng and Alaba.
Well, it's brilliant, this, isn't it, James? Because remember last week we had the discussion, we put the question to Alan and said, Haaland against Lewandowski and kind of, the one for the future. And obviously the guy doing it now, two of the greatest number 9s, certainly in the last few years. You look at first scorer odds, Robert Lewandowski, 13-5, 8-13 anytime. Haaland, 4-1 as first scorer odds. I mean, that's another bet that I lost at the weekend. I think I got 6-1 on Haaland first scorer. And James was texting me saying, Guerrero, you got 8-1, didn't you, on Guerrero first scorer?
Well, I think we all did, didn't we? So apart from you, Rala. Sorry, Will.
What do you fancy then when you look down those odds, James, in terms of first scorer? Just to give you a few more on the Bayern list: Gnabry 11-2, Perisic 7-1, Muller, who's been scoring for fun recently as well, 7-1, and on the other side you can get Sancho 6-1, Torgan Hazard 10-1, Brandt 12-1.
Yeah, I think in these type of games you'd be sort of picking the central focal point of the attack, so your Haaland and your Lewandowski usually. I think you actually mentioned last week, Will, about Guerrero on the show and what form he's been in, and I'm sure Alan's got a hidden camera in my room somewhere looking at my notes, because I had wrote down here that whoever wins that battle on the flanks is going to dominate the game. So what I'd be tempted to go for would be Guerrero again. The form he's been in, he's one of those players, obviously does it week in, week out for Dortmund, but without fans there, it's almost like a training match for him. Everything looks so effortless. Julian Brandt in the middle as well. He's popping up at left wing back 1 minute, and then he's playing central midfield. And that sort of free-flowing football for Dortmund makes it really hard to pick down a first goal scorer. But if I was to go for a punt, Haaland at 4-1 is a great shout. But I think I'm tempted to go with Guerrero again after what he's done over the last couple of weeks and sort of the form he showed over the last 2 weeks as well.
Yeah, good odds as well, Alan. Actually looking at that, Rafael Guerrero, I didn't read that one out a minute ago. 12-1 first scorer, 7-2 any time. He's got 3 goals in his last 2 games. And also, I haven't asked you, what are these games? You did play in a Dead Classic, didn't you, in your time in Germany?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, absolutely.
To play in?
Fabulous. I couldn't wait for the game to begin. Even getting to the stadium and stuff, it's just different, and you can sense it, you can taste it. It's so good. The biggest frustrating thing for me was when we're in the dressing room, and it was Jupp Heynckes was the manager at the time, the coach, and we'd be talking about it, and I just wanted to get out. I was like, "Come on, let's go, man!" I was like, "Come on!" But it was brilliant, yeah. And I was thankfully on the winning team a couple of times, etc. But even when Dortmund came to Munich, the games are absolutely fantastic, and I am looking forward to it. Do me a favour here, because if James and I are saying that the things might come from out to win, did you see the way Goretzka scored his first goal for Bayern at the weekend? That will happen again. There'll be a break. There'll be someone coming late, someone that will be cut back, and a midfield player will say, "Thank you very much." That is how there's going to be a goal scored in this game for sure. And I'd be happy to go with Goretzka again. It's hard to go away from Guerrero and Haaland, you're right. And I think James is spot on when he says he looked pretty effortless, Guerrero. I mean, he looked really, really good. But I've already tipped Bayern to win, so I'm going to go Goretzka, probably at a big price to pick up the first goal.
Interesting as well, just to give us another little steer, 9 of the last 10 meetings, James, in all competitions have produced over 2.5 goals, 6 of those coming in the Bundesliga. And we talked about Robert Lewandowski, but Lewandowski scored 10 goals in his last 7 appearances in all comps against his old club, opening the scoring in 3 of them. And just a reminder, Lewandowski first scorer odds 13-5, 8-13 any time. What was that, Alan? I can't remember it. When he, James, when he joined Bayern Munich, because I remember Götze used to have security guards around and all that. Was there an absolute uproar when he left for Bayern from Dortmund?
Yeah, not so much as the Götze one. The Götze one, I remember reading a piece on, I can't remember what website it was a few years ago, where Götze had actually been interviewed about moving to Bayern, and he said that his family, his sort of close friends had to, have security almost outside their house. It created that much of an uproar. Purely for the fact that Götze was a Dortmund boy, lived not too far from the stadium. I think Lewandowski was a little bit different in the sense that he'd come in for a few seasons and then moved on to Bayern. There was still that uproar because it was around the time that the likes of obviously Götze went, Hummels went. So Dortmund fans obviously not too happy with that. Compared to him and Götze, I think Götze created more of a stir, but obviously losing your best player at the time to your main title rivals is always going to sting. And whenever he does play at Signal Iduna, there's always that bit of hostility towards him, even more so from the fans than there is to sort of any other Bayern Munich player. Yeah,
you mentioned Goretzka. I've got that one up now for you, Alan. Leon Goretzka, 10-1 first goal scorer.
Money in the bank.
3-1 any time. Fancy a bit of that. And look, we should mention before we move on to our Acca, Alan, that a draw really would be interesting, wouldn't it? In that, hopefully it's a great draw for us to watch. But if a draw was to happen, for Leipzig and Leverkusen, 54 points, 53 points, you can get for the draw, by the way, just a reminder, 3-1.
Well, funnily enough, we've been speaking about all scenarios at the moment, and I had a quick look at the league table, and I was thinking, well, if there is a draw, and then obviously Leverkusen or Leipzig, or even obviously Gladbach, if they can get their finger out somehow, that would be a wonderful result for 3-4 teams below them. I think there'll be a result in this. I think Dortmund would bite your hand off for a point right now, just to make sure that Bayern, don't go 7 points clear, and all of a sudden it looks as though the title's gone. But it will be a fantastic game. Listen, the game's on at 5:30 Tuesday night. What a way to start Tuesday, Wednesday. It's going to be brilliant.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to our Acca, shall we? Because we mentioned it at the top of the show, but we're 0 from 2, unfortunately. We went Hertha Berlin, Freiburg, Dortmund and Bayern, -1 handicap. We got that boosted from 11-1 to 16-1 with Paddy Power, and of course Freiburg letting us down. We'll put that one aside because we've done and dusted that one. This week, what do we fancy? So look, I always go first because you guys know more than me. So the one that I wanted to go was Leverkusen, but Alan, you're firm on that one, so you're going Leverkusen. I'll let you be responsible for Leverkusen. Let's put it that way. I quite fancy. I don't know if you guys are going to agree with this one, but I quite fancy Augsburg at home to Paderborn. Augsburg thumping Schalke at the weekend. Paderborn, I know they got a draw, and it's just not really good enough for them, is it? But
No.
At home, Augsburg, that one to kick us off. It's quite a tricky one when you look at an Acca this week, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you're right. Augsburg had a wonderful result, and it's always good to listen. A winning habit is a good thing to have, and they're back at home for the game against Paderborn. Paderborn, of course, are rock bottom. Was it a draw at the weekend? Was it
draw? Yeah.
I think they drew again, didn't they? Against Hoffenheim. I wouldn't put you off with that one, to be honest. I think it's James, you maybe know the boy Finn Bogason, the Icelandic boy. He was injured. I know he was injured. I think he was back in the team.
He's still out injured. I think he's not too far away, but probably I think midweek will come too soon. I'd expect maybe next weekend. Sort of all been well in training for him. Yeah.
And in the first game, they really probably should have nabbed a point, but Wolfsburg scored in the 91st minute. So yeah, I wouldn't put you off Augsburg. Paderborn, I think they're going to go down, no problem. But for our Acca, I'm happy for you to go for Augsburg.
And just look, third time lucky. I'm holding us to it. And go on. I mentioned you fancying Leverkusen there. Talk us through that one. Leverkusen home to Wolfsburg.
They've been just sublime. We've mentioned a few players that's so high on the radar. The boy Kai Havertz, who's the goal scorer, will do well to keep him. And Wolfsburg have done okay, but okay is probably not good enough against a team that looked just fantastic against another team, incidentally, in Gladbach, who they beat 3-1, that I thought might cause them more problems, and that didn't happen. So back at home, Leverkusen, just a shade of odds on 3-4. That's a big price. I think they'll beat Wolfsburg. I expect them to get at least another 3 goals.
Okay, so what we fancy on that one? We fancy a -1 handicap, Leverkusen?
No, I'm just going to go straight.
Straight.
Just don't put me under pressure now. I mean, having said that, if I think they're going to get 3 goals, I should really put -1, but you never know. Let's just go straight 3-4. Still a good price.
Okay, so I'm going straight Augsburg, Paderborn. You're going for a Leverkusen win over Wolfsburg. James, what do you fancy this week?
Under pressure.
I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to go with Leipzig at home to Hertha. As you mentioned, Will, quite a few teams that you'd want to stay clear of for an Acca this week. There's quite a lot of teams around each other, playing each other. So I'm going to go with Leipzig. I just can't look past them at the moment, putting 5 past Mainz. Quite admittedly, it was a poor sort of Mainz defensive display. But, you know, if you put in 5 goals past the team away from home to come back home in your next game, you've got to back them. Hertha, good on the road under Labadia, won 4-0 in the derby. I think Union didn't put up much of a fight and made it easy at times for Hertha. Obviously, you can only beat what's in front of you. But I'm going to stick with Leipzig. I wouldn't be surprised if Werner gets another couple to add to his sort of tally for the season. So, yeah, I'm going to play it safe again. Hopefully stay I'm 2 for 2 at the moment. Hopefully stay and go 3 for 3. Play it safe and go Leipzig on my end.
Right, what are we going for number 4 to make our Acca? I mean, I don't want to touch the Klassiker with either of your barge poles. Hertha Berlin is a difficult one, isn't it? As James just mentioned, they were brilliant at the weekend, and you're going for Leipzig in that one. But any other one catching your fancy, Alan, when you look down that list? Werder Bremen, difficult to touch on how bad they were and how good they were this week.
Oh, man, I can't. But I mean, listen, I thought Freiburg would turn them over, and Bremen were excellent, albeit that Freiburg were very poor. And then, of course, you've got Frankfurt at home to Frankfurt at home to Freiburg, who just looked spineless is too strong. That's not the right word to use, but certainly
toothless.
Well, yeah, that's a better idea. Yeah, I like that one for sure. Listen, them and Schalke, you can't touch at the moment with a barge pole. I'd be quite happy to go with Gladbach because I still think they're a decent team, and Bremen will find it much more difficult than they did against Freiburg. At the same time, James, Frankfurt at home to Freiburg. I don't know, is it Frankfurt or Gladbach? One of those two, James? What do you think?
Yeah, they're the 2 I've got wrote down. I think Frankfurt, even though they did ship 5 goals to Bayern, there were signs there, especially from set pieces, they caused Bayern trouble. And I think in the second half as well, they played a lot better. When they went in at half-time, I thought, it could be a 5 or 6-0 job this, and credit to them, they really dug in the second half, and they are sliding towards the relegation zone. So I think picking up points at home for them now is going to be key. So I can see them raising their game even more so in midweek. I think, as you mentioned, Gladbach at Bremen, with just how consistent Bremen are at the moment, you just don't know which team's going to turn up, and it's sort of been a story their season, really. They put in a good performance and then follow it up with 2 or 3 absolutely horrendous ones. So if I was to go with one, a bit of a coin cost for me. I'd err more towards the side of Frankfurt just because they're at home. Obviously, you mentioned, Alan, about the away wins, but I think Frankfurt more so in need of the points than Gladbach at the moment, even though Gladbach do have top 4 aspirations. I think Frankfurt, encouraging signs in that Bayern Munich game, and I'd head more towards them for an Acca.
I'm kind of glad you said that, because I think you're dead right, Will. Werder Bremen is like, not chalk and cheese. It's like what one's turning up, because if the very first night we saw them, you're thinking, oh my goodness, this wonderful football club is going to be going straight down. And then they go and pull a performance against Freiburg, who I thought would probably cause them problems. So I'm happy all day long to go with Frankfurt to beat Freiburg.
You're right. I mean, look, we talked about that first week we did the show, didn't we? Werder Bremen losing at home to Leverkusen. I know it was Leverkusen who've been brilliant the last 2 weeks, but they looked completely improved, completely different team. They just looked like they were, getting back in numbers, which you couldn't say when they got battered 4-1 against Leverkusen. And then going forward as well, so much more confidence. Don't know where it came from in the space of 4 or 5 days or so. So that's what we're going for, guys. We're going for Leverkusen, Augsburg, Leipzig, and Frankfurt. Right, well, there we go. Hopefully, for everyone watching and listening, that's one to follow to get us, third time lucky for our first Acca, successful Acca of the season. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Remember, if you're looking for additional stats and trends ahead of the Bundesliga this week, make sure, as we say to you every week, go and download the Footy Accumulators Betting Hub app. Give the smart Acca function a try. Remember, you've got to be 18 plus to bet, and please gamble responsibly. Hey, look, fingers crossed for a good De Klassiker. We'll see you guys next time.